Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a big thunderstorm event over parts of the East Coast. This is going to be stretching from parts of the Southeast all the way up to Maine and New Hampshire, so really a big widespread severe weather event, and it's going to be particularly focused over areas like Georgia, the Carolinas, and then back up through Virginia, Maryland, and maybe even up through Delaware as well. We already have an enhanced risk of severe weather for a little area of Virginia and North Carolina, so we already have some elevated risks for severe weather. We have a bunch of flash flood warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings currently in effect as well. So we're going to be tracking all of that and more and giving you an update on that storm in today's video. Here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like. It is very, very active today. We have some winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings up for parts of Washington and Oregon, as well as some wind advisories in the light brown color for parts of Idaho, Nevada, California, and Oregon and Washington. We have high wind warnings in effect for pretty much the entire state of Montana and Idaho, back through a little bit of Oregon and Washington into parts of Wyoming, and then back through a little portion of western South Dakota. We have high wind watches in effect for parts of Nebraska, South Dakota, and Wyoming as well. And then we also have some red flag warnings in effect for parts of the northern and central plains, and also for the northern and central plains in that kind of tan color right here, we have some fire weather watches in effect. So we have a lot of high wind alerts and also fire alerts over parts of the western and northern United States. We have more wind advisories actually back on the East Coast as well. So for parts of New England, upstate New York, back through Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and then also back through South Carolina and Georgia, we have some more wind advisories. We have pretty much the entire part of eastern and central Tennessee, as well as a little bit of Virginia, and I believe a little bit of Kentucky and North Carolina as well, involved in some flash flood warnings. We also have some flood watches underneath there in the green. We also have a couple flood watches up for a little bit of Maine and upstate New York as well. And then we have a tiny area of severe thunderstorm watches for northwestern Georgia and east central Alabama as well. Yesterday, the lower 48's high temperature was in Zapata, Texas, where they got to 102 degrees Fahrenheit, and their low temperature was in Peter Sinks, Utah, where they got to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest precipitation report was in Augusta, Georgia, where they got 2.33 inches of snowfall, or actually of rainfall. And the highest snowfall report was in Ouray, Colorado, where they got 8 inches of reported snowfall yesterday. Here's what the current radar looks like if we were to zoom out and just kind of take a broad look at this storm. So your general area of low pressure is back up through here in the northeast. We have a more convective line of storms, which is further to the south. It's passing through eastern Tennessee, heading over into North Carolina, northwestern Georgia, and central Alabama by this point. And the main threat is going to be damaging winds with this. We've seen a couple reported tornadoes, but the main threat has been hail and damaging winds. We're dealing with mostly non-convective rain back up through and further to the north. It's as you get further to the south that you get a little bit more in the way of convective activity. And if we're to zoom in here, you're going to see that we have a fairly robust, strong line of storms, which is heading through northern Georgia and back through central and eastern Alabama as well. And that's been heading eastward at around 30 to 50 miles per hour. So it has been moving quite fast further to the east. It has been causing some flooding issues. That's why in much of Tennessee, they've seen a flash flood warning actually go up. So they have been dealing with quite a bit of flooding due to this heavy band of rainfall that's overflowing those roadways, and it's really been a big issue over those areas, trying to clear out the roads from all that rain that did fall during that band of heavy precipitation. Here's the current mesoscale discussion, and you can see that over parts of northern Georgia and east central Alabama, they're talking about how this band of rain, which we just showed, is moving into that area. It will be weakening, but they are also talking about potentially a few strong wind gusts this morning over those areas due to that band of heavy rainfall. We also have a severe thunderstorm watch in that same area for northwestern Georgia and northern and central Alabama as well. Wouldn't be surprised if that does get expanded further to the south and to the east. And this is just the first line of storms, not even the big line of storms that we're going to be talking about for later this afternoon. Here's what the current Storm Prediction Center forecast is for today. And you can see that we have a marginal risk of severe thunderstorms anywhere in that green. And then in that yellow, that's where you have a slight risk of severe thunderstorms. That covers much of the southeast and also back through parts of the mid-Atlantic and a tiny area in southeastern Virginia and northern North Carolina, where we have actually an enhanced risk of severe weather. That's in the orange. And if we look at the individual risks, you'll see that we have a 5% chance of tornadoes. So not a huge chance of tornadoes, although I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple reported here and there. And that's over eastern Virginia, southern and central Maryland, back through southern Delaware and eastern North Carolina as well. If we look at the hail probability, that's also quite low. We're looking at maybe 5% chance at the most in these areas in the green, so not a huge risk of hail, but when you look at the wind risk, that's where it really gets elevated. And you can see that we have that yellow area within a 15% chance of seeing hail damage, and then actually in that red area we have a 30% chance of seeing wind damage there. So we are looking at a quite fairly great risk for some wind damage, especially as you get that line of storms to roll through. You could see some straight line wind damage. Here's what the HRRR model is showing for this line of storms and this general area of severe thunderstorms, and we're gonna be timing this out for you guys, giving you a general idea of what you should be expecting. So this is right around right now when I'm recording, actually about 45 minutes from when I'm recording this. I'm recording this right around 10:15 in the morning Eastern time, so that would be right around 9:15 in the morning Central time. So in another 30 to 45 minutes from when I'm recording this, we are expecting the radar to look somewhat like this. The line of storms further to the south does weaken, like what the Storm Prediction Center is indicating. We continue with those fairly non-convective areas of rainfall back through the northeast, so not too much to deal with in those areas. Then as you get to right around 2 o'clock today, this is when that line of storms starts to head into parts of the Carolinas and into Virginia as well. I think this is the point when you're going to see probably a fairly high risk for tornadoes, and this is probably going to be one of the higher risks for tornadoes today, right around 1 to 3 p.m. today, because we're dealing with mostly these storms are really not in a line, not really connected together, so they're really mostly just supercell types of thunderstorms. Those are the two, that's the type of thunderstorms that does produce the most tornadoes, not the big lines of storms, not the derechos that you see, but it's actually the tinier storms that are kind of broken off on their own. It gives more space for a tornado to grow, and that's why those types of thunderstorms actually see the most tornadoes. So even though it doesn't look too impressive here, each one of those little red dots on your screen with the heavy rainfall is capable of producing a tornado, so you want to watch out for that. Here to be by right around 5 p.m. Today Eastern time, and this is when it starts to get a little bit more intense in terms of the rainfall. So you see this first line of storms, which goes from the Adirondacks down through western North Carolina, and then we have another line of storms which is back through the eastern Carolinas and also into southeasternmost Virginia, and then another line of storms back through here in South Carolina and Georgia. So we have 3 different lines of storms, but I really want you guys to pay attention on this one, because this is going to be your next threat here. This big one that stretches all the way from upstate New York down to North Carolina. So this would be, again, by 5 p.m. Here's by 8 p.m. So we're dealing with a fairly robust line of storms back through southeastern Virginia and also into parts of eastern North Carolina. And we are dealing with mostly heavy rain and gusty winds with this first band. That then moves back and further to the east, and then that threat really dies down after that, maybe even a few snow showers on the back end as we get into much colder, drier air after the system departs. Here's the high temperatures for today, because they will be very, very warm, especially if you live from southeastern Virginia further to the south and to the east, because look, we have that 80-degree line which stretches into this area, so anywhere here is above 80 degrees for today, and this 70-degree line is basically basically right down through here. So anywhere back through here is right around 70 degrees or greater. So we have a fairly warm atmosphere in place. We definitely have no shortage of warm air. Even that 60-degree line is getting fairly far to the south for this time of year. This is your 60-degree line right here. So we are dealing with very warm temperatures for this time of year, and those warm temperatures are going to be probably, I would say, probably 5 to 10 degrees above normal, and then on the back end they're probably going to be 10 to 20 degrees below normal. If we look at the dew points, you're going to see that we have dew points that are above 60 degrees all throughout parts of the mid-Atlantic and the southeast. The 60-degree dew point threshold is basically what I like to use to indicate where severe thunderstorms are likely and where non-severe thunderstorms are likely, because once you get above 60-degree dew points, it does seem like most thunderstorms, once they pass through there, and do end up becoming severe. If you're typically below that in the upper 50s, mid 50s, you're typically not seeing too much in the way of severe weather activity. So that's the general threshold that I like to use. So this will be by 2 p.m. today. Here's by 5 p.m. You can see that starts to rise further to the north. I have been noticing that especially back through here, there is some indication of a fairly decent path of storms that rolls through there. So we do want to watch out for that. In the northeast, even, there is some threat of damaging winds. So I would say that area that I just circled, you could maybe push that a little bit further to the south and east, but that area does look to be in the path of some decent thunderstorms. Even though they're in the upper 50s for dew points, still mostly non-convective damaging winds is what we're looking at in that area. And then behind the front, you can see that we have dew points that go from the 60s all the way down to the 20s and 30s as you get back further to the west. So a very, very large dew point drop, and that will also help strengthen the storm. When you get a large deficit from the eastern side of the system to the western side of the system, you're dealing with most likely a more convective and dynamic type of storm system that's able to pull in a lot of warm air but also drag down a lot of cold air on the other side of the storm. Here's what the significant tornado parameter looks like, the STP, and we're looking at wherever you get a value above 1, so that's anywhere in kind of this medium shade of blue, which is right down here. That's where you're looking at a fairly good shot that you are going to see some convective activity. And we are dealing with a fairly large area that does have that threat of seeing convective activity. So you can see that by even later today, we have STP values that are close to 2 to 4 there. And then eventually it does start to move further to the east. We're seeing that taper down a little bit. But still, that's a fairly high risk for this time of year. We're only in late March and we're already dealing with these fairly big severe weather events. And then you're going to see that the SCP, the supercell composite parameter, is also fairly high. So we have values that you only need them to really be above 2.5 to 3. But once they are above there, then you have the threat of supercells, and you can see all through parts of the Carolinas and Virginia, we have that threat of seeing some supercells. And again, supercells are the type of thunderstorms that spawn the most damaging winds, the most hail, and also they have the greatest threat of seeing some tornadoes. So we really want to watch out for supercells, especially because they're way more dangerous than just a line of storms, mainly due to that tornado threat that they do pose. Here to be by later today, right around 5 p.m., and you can see that really blows up over parts of the eastern North Carolina, southeastern Virginia, closer to 6 to 8 STP values. So that's very, very high, and we do really want to watch out for that. And I think that area, which the Storm Prediction Center really outlined, which was this area right here, has a fairly high risk of seeing either one tornado, a couple tornadoes maybe, and also some damaging winds, especially I think is the main threat. The damaging wind threat is going to be very, very large over that area. And then, of course, the SCP, as that frontal system moves by, also dies down on the back end. Here's what the CAPE looks like, the convective available potential energy. And we're looking at values between 500 and 1,000 through the eastern Carolinas and eastern Virginia as well. So that's also very, very favorable. Typically, you want them to be above 500, and in most of these cases, they are above 500 joules per kilogram. And then you can see that as that system heads further to the east, the CAPE values actually rise a little bit ahead of the front, and then they'll die down on the back side of the front. Here's the maximum wind gust with this event. And you can see that we have maximum wind gusts that are going to be in miles per hour, closer to 60 to 70 miles per hour in some of these bands, especially through northern North Carolina and in some of the mountainous terrain of western Virginia and western North Carolina, and also for southern Virginia, where you get caught in one of those little thunderstorms that develop. You could be dealing with very, very gusty winds, and that threat does not only carry for the mid-Atlantic. Look all the way up the east coast into the northeast, and we're looking at the wind gusts that are going to be gusting closer to 60 miles per hour, especially as you get into northern New England. That's when the wind gusts really start to go a little bit higher. So we want to watch out for this big threat of wind damage, especially I think that'll be the biggest threat with this, the wind damage. The SPC is already showing wind damage probabilities of up to 30%. So they are very, very intrigued with that threat of wind damage, and so am I, because it does look like that's going to be one of the primary threats that you do want to watch out for. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.